Simple postural exercises and ergonomic adjustments will never truly correct hyperkyphosis. You see, many people believe that being hunched over or having bad posture can be corrected by making a few simple ergonomic adjustments or adding a few simple postural exercises. Now, this rarely works because hyperkyphosis involves both structural and physiological changes that need to be addressed. And if you don't properly address those, you cannot properly correct or improve hyperkyphosis or bad posture. Hi, I'm Dr. Chris Gubbels, leading authority in the non-surgical treatment of scoliosis and hyperkyphosis. And in this video, I'm going to address the number one limiting factor that will prevent you from being able to improve bad posture or improve hyperkyphosis. Now, when we think about bad posture or true hyperkyphosis, there are three key elements or components that need to be addressed. There's a neurological component, there's an actual structural component, and there's a mobility or stiffness that needs to be addressed. Now, if you're liking this content, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you'll be notified when we release new content on addressing scoliosis and hyperkyphosis. Now, before we address those three key components to correcting or fixing bad posture hyperkyphosis, let's take a quick look at how hyperkyphosis or bad posture can really affect you. You see, the number one cause that people want to fix bad posture or being hunched over is the aesthetics. People do not like how they look. They want the aesthetic improvement. I can think of a patient right now who came to see me, and she's a healthcare professional. She's actually a respected pharmacist. And the number one reason she came to see me is she simply did not like how she looked. She was really hunched over, and yes, it was causing neck pain. She would get regular headaches. She'd get pain between her shoulder blades. But the number one thing she wanted to fix is how she looked. She was actually embarrassed about her physical appearance. This is like a 40-year-old respected pharmacist. Now think if you're a parent and you have a teenager that's really hunching over or they have a hyperkyphosis. The number one reason they want to fix it is also because they do not like their physical appearance. And when someone does not like their physical appearance, we know that has emotional and psychological implications. I mean, being a teenager is already challenging enough. You add on top of that, someone does not like how they look or they lack self-confidence because of their appearance, that only makes those years more challenging than it potentially needs to be. So we know there's psychological or emotional impacts on being hunched over or having hyperkyphosis. Well, what about other physiological things? When someone hunches over, we know it can impact your organs. Two specific organ systems it can impact are your heart and your lungs. Now, a few years ago, I had the privilege to sit and listen to the number one researcher on hyperkyphosis, and she specifically focused on hyperkyphosis and osteoporosis in women. And one thing I'll never forget, she showed a research study that showed if you are hyperkyphotic, meaning you are hunched over, you are 2.4 times more likely to have a cardiovascular event than someone that is not hyperkyphotic. So if all things are the same blood pressure, same heart rate, and all that stuff, if you're hunched over and someone else is not, you are 2.5 times more likely to develop a cardiovascular event. Also, when you dive into the research, we know that hyperkyphosis is an increased risk of all-cause mortality. What that means, if you are hunched over, you're simply not going to live as long or not likely to live as long as someone that's not, because it increases all-cause mortality. And another thing, we know it increases the risk of falls and fractures. You see, there's a test. It's called the Get Up and Go test. You can time how long it takes for someone to go from sitting to standing and being able to walk. And the longer it takes someone to go from sitting to standing to walking, the more likely they are to fall and get a fracture. Now, it's interesting. The more hyperkyphotic is, the more hunched over someone is, the longer it typically takes them to go from sitting to standing to walking. So because of that, we know when someone is hunched over, that's a huge predictor of loss of balance, falls, and fractures. And as you age, falling and getting a fracture, like a hip fracture, is directly related to mortality rates. So it's not just about how you look. We know it dramatically impacts your overall health and well-being, including organ functions, risk of falls and fractures, and really it impacts how long a life you will likely live. So let's dive in to how we actually address this. So if you're watching this and you know you have hyperkyphosis or you're feeling hunched over and you're not sure what to do, Click on that link below and request a free discovery call. That'll give you a chance to talk to me one-on-one about your individual case, what you're dealing with, how severe it is, and most importantly, what treatment options are available to you. Now let's dive into those 3 components before we go over the 5 key exercises. The number 1 component is there's a neurological component. Part of fixing bad posture is retraining your neurology. When you're hunched over all the time, that becomes normal. Your brain actually thinks you're straight. It doesn't realize you're hunched over. So we have to retrain or rewire your brain and nervous system. This is called neuromuscular reeducation. And neuromuscular reeducation can involve several things. It can involve certain exercise that retrain your brain and nervous system how your body should be. A lot of times this involves doing things very frequent and a high number of repetitions so that your body starts to retrain almost like muscle memory. There's a proprioceptive component. All your joints, muscles, ligaments, tendons send signals to your brain, your cerebellum, that tells your brain where you are in position in space. And putting proper proprioceptive input into your brain helps retrain your body how to hold itself in the right position. That can be done through certain exercises. That can be done through certain stretches. That can be done through things like chiropractic adjustments or manipulation that stimulates movement and proprioception. So there are many things involved in improving the neurological component or neuromuscular reeducation. The second component is actually something that cannot be changed once it develops, and that's called structural or bony deformity. Now there's 2 different types of this. One, if someone has a true Sherman's hyperkyphosis, this is a genetic condition that someone develops during growth spurts where the front of the vertebrae grows slower and the back of the vertebrae go much faster, causing the vertebrae to be wedge-shaped. And someone hunches over really big because of this. Now, if we catch this during growing years, we can actually do things to address it and influence how the spine grows. For example, wearing a custom brace like a Kypho brace or a Kyphosis brace can actually guide the growth and decrease the amount of hyperkyphosis someone develops, or decreasing the wedging in those vertebrae if properly addressed during growth spurts. Now, the other type is more of a degenerative condition. You see, when you're really hunched over, you put more pressure on the front of the bones than the back of the bones. When you put pressure on those bones, they start to break down and decay. Now, when we look at people as they age, if someone is hunched over and they have osteoporosis, and you put that extra pressure on those weakened bones, people are more likely to develop a compression fracture. This happens a lot of times in women when they hit osteoporosis after menopause and the bone mineral starts to weaken and they put that extra pressure because they hunch over, they're likely to develop a compression fracture. In fact, one study I read this morning said that 40% of adult seniors with hyperkyphosis also have a compression fracture deformity. So there's structural wedging or deformity that can happen during growth for someone with like Sherman's kyphosis, and it can also happen later on as a degenerative or breaking down process with aging and how we hunch over. Now, another thing I'm starting to see with so many kids hunching over on phones and devices, even some kids that do not have a true Sherman's kyphosis can actually develop wedging in their vertebrae as they age just from being hunched over all the time. And the last component that we're going to address, and we're going to get right into this in these exercises we're about to show you, is the mobility or stiffness factor. You see, when we're looking at how much we can influence a kyphosis in our office, the number 1 predictor is how stiff their body is. The stiffer your spine gets, the harder it is to reduce that kyphosis. That stiffness can come from the wedging, but it can also come from stiffness in the connective tissues. You see, the largest ligament in your body, and ligaments connect bones to bone, goes down the front of your vertebral column. It's called your anterior longitudinal ligament. This is a very thick, strong ligament. And when you hunch over all the time like this, that ligament contracts and shrinks. And the only way to really correct kyphosis when that ligament is shrunk is you have to stretch out or re-elongate that ligament. Now, when you do simple exercises, that actually stretches muscle. And muscle can be stretched relatively easily compared to ligaments. When you stretch a ligament, you have to hold it in a stretched position for a prolonged period of time, ideally 15 to 20 minutes. And that requires specialized treatment to do that. So we have white tissue that needs stretched, and we have red soft tissue. Most of the things we're going to be doing today are actually going to be addressing the red connective tissue like muscle and start getting into the white tissue. So those are the three components. The things that we are going to go over today are the neuromuscular reeducation part and the mobility part. So without further ado, let's dive into the 5 exercises and stretches that you can do that address the number one thing that's going to minimize or limit how much you can correct your postural kyphosis, which is overall spinal mobility. Okay, the first exercise for someone with hyperkyphosis or Shortens kyphosis is to do a simple foam roller just to increase some mobility in your spine. So you're just gonna lay on your back, place this between your shoulder blades, lift your hips up. You can cross your arms, but you don't wanna have them too crossed because you wanna have this open and to be able to expand and open up your thoracic spine and rib cage. You're just gonna roll up and down your rib cage, letting your shoulders open up. You can roll to the sides to increase some mobility in your rib cage, and just roll up and down your spine. I recommend, at least 10 times. Now, the second exercise you can do for hyperkyphosis or Shortens kyphosis is a prone thoracic extension, and there's 3 different ways you can do this. The easiest way is just to lay face down, put your arms in front of you, and start to extend your thoracic spine, keeping your pelvis on the ground. You can go up on your elbows, and as you get more mobile, you can push up and lift your head up all the way into extension. Now, if you have lower back problems, you gotta be careful because this can put some extra strain on your lower back. If you have a true deformity in your thoracic spine, you probably have a very rigid part of your spine. Now, to get some more mobility in a very specific rigid part, we can actually use a band to create a fulcrum. So this is great for someone that has a true structural deformity or a hyperkyphosis. This is a nice stretchy band. The green one is generally the stiffest. I'm gonna put this around my body. I'm gonna try and place this right where the peak of my curve is. And then I'm gonna lay down. I'm gonna place my hands in front of me, arms out, and I'm gonna extend like this. Now I'm getting thoracic extension while creating a fulcrum for my thoracic spine to pivot on. And just get a nice stretch like that. And the last prone thoracic extension exercise is more of an active exercise compared to stretch. It's also known as Superman's. You're gonna lay face down, arms either out in front of you or to the sides, and you're gonna extend your back up. If you want, you can raise your legs with this. You're gonna hold this in extension for a few seconds and go down and up, and you're gonna repeat this about 10 to 15 times. Now, people with hyperkyphosis typically have a position in their posture where their thoracic spine is hunched over and their shoulders and upper back tilt backwards. There's an exercise you can do called a mirror image exercise, which is basically putting your body in the opposite position. I'm gonna show you 2 ways to do this. The first one is forward facing the wall. So what you wanna do in this, you wanna take a block. You can use a foam roller, it's a great height. You're gonna place it right at your pelvic level or belt level, facing straight ahead, and then you're gonna translate your body forward, your torso forward, and that's gonna cause you to extend or open up your thoracic spine. So just going straight forward, holding that for 5 or 10 seconds, going forward again, holding it for 5 or 10 seconds, and I'm not flexing, I'm translating straight ahead, and I'm holding that. Another way you can do this is with your back against the wall. In this case, I would take my foam roller or block. I'm gonna place this between my shoulder blades or where the peak of my kyphosis is. I'm gonna have my pelvis back towards the wall and open up my arms, and I'm gonna extend back and pull my head back. I'm gonna open up my chest, put my thoracic spine in extension. I'm gonna hold that for 5 or 10 seconds and relax. And then I'm gonna repeat that. So this is basically doing the same things, but just one way is facing forward, the other way is facing away from the wall. This is something you want to do as a high repetition. Start off around 20 repetitions, and you can work up to anywhere between 50 to 100 repetitions, holding that position for 5 to 10 seconds. Now, when you develop hyperkyphosis, it also causes a rounding of the shoulders, and it can really decrease mobility of the shoulders. So a great exercise to work on both the thoracic hyperkyphosis, but also to increase shoulder mobility, is the shoulder pass-through. Now there's some different ways we can do this. To demonstrate, I'm going to use a band like this. To make it more challenging, you want to hold your hands closer together. To make it easier, you're going to hold your hands further apart. Also, you can hold a stiffer band to make it more challenging, and when you get really good at it, you can use like a stick or a pole. But I'm going to take my hands like this. I'm going to keep my arms straight. I'm going to take them, I'm going to rotate my arms up. I'm going to rotate my shoulders all the way down and back. And I'm going to repeat this back and forth about 10 times. Now as my mobility increases, I can just move my hands closer together to make this a little more challenging, to make my shoulders work a little bit harder. But I would do this at least 10 to 15 times. And the last exercise I want to show you for someone with hyperkyphosis is called the box exercise. This is great for thoracic spine and shoulder mobility. You can do this on any bench, you could do this on a box, you could do this on a table. You just need something you can put your hands on. So when I do this, I'm going to be on my knees. I'm going to place my arms and hands on the table, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower my chest, I'm extending my arms, and I'm just going to lower my body, look up, and this is creating a lot of stretch and extension in my mid and upper thoracic spine. I'm going to hold this for a few seconds, and I'm going to repeat this at least 10 times. Now, doing those 5 exercises and stretches on a regular basis can definitely help improve mobility to your spine and help with improving posture and kyphosis. But there's likely more things that need to be addressed. So if you're dealing with hyperkyphosis and bad posture and you're not sure what to do, click on the link below, request that free discovery call, set up a time to talk to me, and we'll look at your spine, let you know how severe it is, and most importantly, we'll let you know what treatment options are available to properly address and potentially correct your bad posture or your hyperkyphosis. Now, to learn more about hyperkyphosis and scoliosis, be sure to check out our other videos on tips and suggestions on correcting these conditions.